First on STV, your latest weekend news.
Breakthrough on a global tax rate. The G7 countries agree to a minimum that big companies must pay. At talks in London, the Chancellor hails an historic agreement.
I think the crucial thing for people to take away is the principle of fairness. That's what we've achieved today to ensure that there's a level playing field for all types of companies.
As some under-20s queue for their first jabs, the government considers delaying the end of England's COVID restrictions. And taking the knee, the England football team vows to continue making a statement against racism.
We feel that more than ever, determined to take the knee through this tournament. We accept that there might be an adverse reaction, and we're just going to ignore that.
This is ITV News with Romilly Weeks.
Good evening. It has been one of the great anomalies of the modern tax system. How can some multinational companies making billions in profits pay relatively little tax? Now, the finance ministers of the G7 nations believe they've struck a deal that will help close those loopholes. In talks in London, they've agreed to impose a minimum global corporation tax rate of at least 15%. It will also ensure the likes of Amazon, Google and Facebook pay tax in countries where they make their profits, as well as those where they declare them, as our political correspondent David Wood reports.
They are household names right across the world, but how much they're taxed and where they pay it could all be about to change. For years, finance ministers have looked to clamp down on global big tech companies. Today, 7 of the world's biggest economies agreed a plan. It includes a global minimum 15% rate of corporation tax. That's the tax businesses pay on profits.
I think the crucial thing for people to take away is the principle of fairness. That's what we've achieved today to ensure that there's a level playing field for all types of companies, and whether it's people operating in tax havens or it's digital companies, we're going to level the playing field and inject that principle of fairness into our global tax system. That's the prize.
At the moment, multinational businesses have subsidiaries registered all over the world, and they can legally move sales or profits between them to minimise their tax bills. The UK taxes corporate profits at 19%. According to the Tax Justice Network, the effective corporation tax rate in Ireland, the Netherlands and Luxembourg can be as low as 1.8%. And in tax havens like the Cayman Islands and Bermuda, it's nothing at all.
That global minimum tax would end the race to the bottom in corporate taxation and ensure fairness for the middle class and working people in the US and around the world.
The G7 also wants to change how the most successful global businesses are taxed, agreeing they should pay tax on 20% of their profits in the country they sell their products and not where they're based. One former Treasury official says that will benefit the UK.
Last year, Microsoft made £220 billion in profit. They paid zero corporation tax because they said they're making their profits in Bermuda. These reforms will help ensure it doesn't matter where Microsoft say they make their profits, they'll be taxed on where they make their sales.
Some of the companies that could be forced to pay more tax have welcomed today's agreement, but asked for certainty soon about how and where their bills will be delivered.
So, David, the G7 has struck this deal, but it's not going to be instantaneous, is it?
No, not at all. And the deal at the moment is only an agreement in principle. And I think it's worth bearing in mind as well, it's taken just 7 countries the best part of a decade to get this far. Many, many more countries will need to sign up for this to be as effective as they hope it will be. Ireland's finance minister, for example, this evening saying, yes, we understand change is coming, but the deal needs to work for large and small countries. So clearly a lot of negotiations will need to go on to make this successful. But this is very significant to get this agreement between 7 countries. But it's a long, long way before we could see any change.
Right, David. Thank you. Now, it's getting more difficult to follow the science on COVID when the scientists themselves disagree. Some experts have come out strongly today in favour of a 2-week delay to lifting the final restrictions in England. But others are making an equally forceful case against it, saying the vaccines have broken the link between catching the virus and becoming seriously ill. Here's Richard Pallow.
More than 40 million of us have now had our first jabs, and 18 and overs were prepared to queue for 5 hours today to be part of that number. Many offered the opportunity at this North London clinic, said they wanted to be vaccinated before going clubbing again in a few weeks.
This has cost me 1.4 million.
But will they be able to help this owner start recouping his losses? Or might the Prime Minister alter the roadmap?
I'm working on that maybe we'll be open to full capacity on June the 21st. And then all these rumours, I mean, if he knows, say it. But all these rumours about whether we're going to open or not, how am I supposed to financially survive?
Government sources have again stressed that no decision has been made. But I understand that in private, other plans are being drawn up. If there was a 2-week delay, then in theory, all over 50s would get the chance of a second vaccination and crucially get time to build up the immunity in that extra fortnight. That's in England. In Scotland, restrictions have been eased today a little. Those living in Glasgow finally able to have alcohol in a bar or restaurant and to meet up in others' homes. Guidelines are also being relaxed in Wales from Monday.
We know that there are much lower levels of hospitalisations compared to previous waves. The people who are coming into hospital are younger and need less critical care. And we also know, therefore, that there's a pretty good chance that the vaccines are breaking the chain between the virus and hospitalisations and mortality.
Encouragingly, there's also been a sharp drop in vaccine hesitancy. Here in Bedford, they've been surge testing door to door. But a group of prominent independent scientists warn it's too early to unlock fully.
It would be a mistake to commit to a reopening on the 21st of June. We are at a very delicate stage.
What restrictions would you like to see brought back in?
We do argue that we need to reimpose mask wearing for secondary schools, and we want to strengthen our border control with strict quarantine.
There is some light at the end of the tunnel, yet far from an agreement on when to let it all in. Richard Pallo, ITV News.
In other news, suspected extremists have killed around 100 people in a terror attack in West Africa. It's reported that armed men raided homes and a market in the village of Solhan in Burkina Faso. The country's president said the government was united against forces of evil. In Venice, the first departure of a cruise ship in 17 months has been met with demonstrations. Some activists welcomed the return of the industry, but hundreds of protesters turned out to voice their disapproval amid fears of potential damage to the World Heritage Site. And American troops have raided a Bulgarian factory by mistake. The soldiers were taking part in a NATO exercise when they accidentally entered a neighbouring building with their weapons drawn. The American embassy has offered its apologies. The England team will continue to take the knee at the start of their matches. Manager Gareth Southgate has said, despite the action being booed recently, he admitted the gesture is losing popularity, but said the players were united in wanting to continue with its anti-racist message. Chris Scudder reports.
England versus Austria 3 days ago.
Before we start here, all the players will take the knee.
England fans booing their own players taking the knee. It's an issue that threatens to disrupt England's preparations with the start of the Euros only a week away. But the players will continue to do it.
We had a productive meeting with a group of the players yesterday. We feel that more than ever, we're determined to take the knee through this tournament. We accept that there might be an adverse reaction, and we're just going to ignore that.
You know, I think the lads and the team spoke about it together, and you know, we came up with the conclusion that regardless of what goes on, you know, around, we're still gonna participate in the kneeling, and I think that's a great idea.
But there are question marks about the effectiveness of the gesture after more than a year. Crystal Palace player Wilfried Zaha declines to take the knee because players still receive abuse.
There's an acceptance that this gesture, if you like, is waning in its impact, because we've been going now for a season.
You did say that you thought there might be an adverse reaction. What did you mean by that?
I think we have to accept that there could be elements of the crowd that boo. That would be hugely disappointing for us, but we're prepared to go through that.
The booing at England's match against Austria was not the first time, and it may not be the last. But England remain undaunted and united ahead of tomorrow's warm-up match against Romania. Chris Scudder, ITV News.
The Queen was not in attendance at the Epsom Derby today for only the fourth time in 75 years. It's thought COVID restrictions prompted her to watch on ITV instead, as a surprise winner romped home.
A dream for Adam Kirby, and he landed the winner!
Clear favourite Bolshoi Ballet was beaten by the 16-1 outsider Adayar. The Godolphin horse won by 4.5 lengths. And it was a triumphant day for England opening batsman Rory Burns, who completed his third Test century in the first Test against New Zealand at Lord's. England made 132 before ending their first innings on 275 all out. New Zealand now lead by 165 runs with 1 day left to play. The people of Coventry have been forced to wait a whole year to celebrate being the UK's city of culture. So today they made up for it with a spectacular but scaled-back opening to their chance to finally put the city in the spotlight. As Mark McQuillan reports, it's designed to honour its past and celebrate its future.
For the people of Coventry, this has been a long wait. So they were always going to enjoy their moment in the spotlight. After a year's delay, they can get the party started as UK City of Culture. The pandemic has changed the course of this year-long festival, with those behind the event having to adapt.
It's been very bizarre planning an event where you're trying not to attract audiences. But on the other hand, we have been able to create something that's fairly unique, I think. We wouldn't have created this if the pandemic hadn't happened. So I'm a big believer in challenges providing creative opportunities.
It has provided opportunities for people like Daniel. The artist and designer is one of the focal points at the start of this festival, one which will focus on innovation, but also inclusivity.
So when I grew up here, I was bullied for being queer, and I moved away at the age of 17, and I've travelled the world, and I've been here the last year and a half, and it's been amazing just to kind of be back home and to see it change so much.
Whether it's art, culture, music or manufacturing, the fact this festival, after a 12-month delay, is now here is something to celebrate in itself. Mark McQuillan, ITV News.
Finally, train staff had to cope with an odd bit of lost property at a station near Glasgow today. A monkey was spotted on the platform at Cambuslang. ScotRail put out an appeal to reunite the animal with its owners, and a few hours later there was good news. They reported it was safely home. And that is it. The weather forecast is next, but from all of us here on the Weekend News team, thanks for watching and good night.